Hi, welcome to the Introduction to Python. This is going to be a very introductory course about Python and just get you familiar with the language. Now, if you're coming from another coding language, this would be super easy. But if you're not familiar with coding at all, this should also be fairly easy and easy to follow. The purpose of having this course is to kind of get you familiar with the language and just let you jump straight in and start really discovering a lot more about the language rather than a long introductory course about all the intricate details of Python, everything like that. And kind of taught in a way that I would like Python to be taught, especially for myself and things that make sense. So we're going to go through the installation of the Python program, the interpreter, and also just run our basic first programs. So let's just get started. So we're going to start off by going to our web browser and typing in python.org. And this will kind of pull up the Python page. It kind of shows you all the documentation that you can refer to later if you want to know about more advanced features of Python. But for now, we're just going to keep it very basic and go to the downloads. So at the moment, the latest version of Python is Python 3.12.2. You can see down this page, if you want to see previous versions of Python, you can see all the previous releases and release notes, the release dates, and all the features that were added to the different versions of Python. But for now, we're just going to kind of focus on the latest version of Python. So we're just going to click this downloads and just pull this into your downloads file. And we're just going to have Python 3.12.2. We're going to pull that up. And you can see that you get this introductory to install Python 3.12.2 and that's 64-bit because that's the architecture that my computer is built on. So before that, we're going to have use administration privileges when installing py.exe, and also we're going to add this Python exe to path. There's a reason that we're going to do this, but the details at the moment don't really matter. Essentially, whenever you're running Python code in your computer, you want to be able to run Python from anywhere within your computer. And if we do not enable this path, it doesn't know where to point to for the Python that we're installing. So we're just going to install it now. Click yes. You can see it's installing the interpreter, the development library, the standard library, and also the test suite or suite. I think suite. And the documentation. So for here, we're just going to wait until this completely installs. And the thing that you should see is this like Python launcher, or not immediately. It's going to be something that is installed like one of the first programs. So before we even need to like have an IDE, which is an interactive development environment, or anything like that, we're going to be able to write any code with a basic text editor. And we can actually just go here, type in our latest version of Python into our search bar, which should be that Python 3.12.2 right here. And we can just open this up. So right here, this is going to be the command line for Python, which allows you just kind of run some very basic Python commands without needing to write any specific code, and just kind of gets you familiar with the language. Originally, whenever coding languages were made, they were made by mathematicians and scientists to kind of accomplish specific tasks. When you have like higher level languages like Python, this allows you to run a bunch of just different commands and do a bunch of different things. For here, we're just going to run something very, very basic, just like to see that our Python is installed correctly. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Pretty basic stuff. Not something that you need to worry about too much. Okay. So from here, we're going to get like a regular text editor, and we're going to I already made this file earlier called Python examples, and this file is completely empty. As I go through the courses, I'm just going to add more and more of this stuff, and I'll probably push it to my GitHub. So it will be something that you'll be able to just look at the code, edit the code any way that you want to, but also you can just not do that if you want to. It's just going to be there as a resource if you'd like to look at it. But it's just going to be so basic that it's not really going to matter all that much. Okay, so for here, I'm just going to open up the terminal for PowerShell. And you can see, cancel this. And here, there's not actually anything in here. So essentially just going to create a new file, text document, and hello Python. Okay. So we're just going to open up this with Notepad. Okay, so essentially for Python, it's going to be very, very, very basic text. It should be like very readable and very easy to kind of write yourself. So for now, we're going to write a very basic Python program without kind of having any of the additional details and stuff like that. So essentially what I can do here is I'm going to write something called print. This is a method, but we'll go into methods and stuff like that in another video. For this right here, anything we put inside of these parentheses is going to be printed out to the console. The console essentially is just the way that we're going to look at the code that we have. And for now, just printing this out to the console here, I can put anything inside of these brackets, or like inside these parentheses. And inside these parentheses, I'm just going to type in hello, comma, Python. And we're just going to take this and we're going to save this file as a different type of file, right? So we're going to take this and we're going to save it as all files. And we're going to have the extension to the Python interpreter, which is .py. That is the file type that every Python file will be written in. So whenever we look at it, it's going to give us a different file. You can see this little symbol that you see Python source file, and you see like just this text file that we had originally, right? So again, within this, it's very base. Like this one doesn't actually have anything in it, but in this file right here, it's very basic. You know, print hello Python. So we're gonna go back to the terminal that we had here, and we can just have ls, and you can see here. Now, we want to run this Python code. If I was just to type in like the hello, like python.py and just run it, it's just asking if I want to open this file and different stuff, right? But for now, I don't actually want to do that. I want to run it just directly from the command line PowerShell stuff. So the way that we do that is we call in the Python executable, which is going to be python.exe, and then we're just going to put in hello Python and just run it, and boom. Immediately, we just ran some very basic code. It says hello Python. Now, let me kind of explain what we did there and why it's kind of working. Okay, so we're going to go back into here, and again, we don't need anything crazy. We can just open this back up with any text editor, really. So we could do like with Word, or we could do it with like Notepad, and we can just edit this Notepad. Essentially, if you're not familiar with coding, we have different things called data types. For data types can be numbers, they can be words, or they can be letters, but we define each of these words, letters, and numbers as some different thing. So we have something called an int or an integer, which is basically a number that is like a whole number. So it could be a positive or negative whole number. We have float point numbers. We have char, which just stands for, this char just stands for character, which is just any kind of letter or symbol that is recognized by any kind of coding language or your system. And we have things called strings, which is just str in Python. Yeah, probably should switch these around. Char. And a string essentially is just some way of writing a bunch of words together. You're stringing a bunch of characters together. So if a character would be like a single letter, like A, a string of characters would be like A, B, C, or maybe some symbols or whatever. In Python, every single thing that we write, other than just like very basic numbers, such as integers, to Python just looks like a string. So if I do something like print 1 plus 1, that will just return 2, right? And printing hello Python is just going to return hello Python because Python is a string. Now, when it comes to strings within Python, we have print and we have a double and single quotes. Now, if you're coming from another coding language, this is going to be really weird because you're like, oh, well, strings normally only have double quotation marks. But in Python, it says that double quotation marks and single quotation marks are both valid kind of quotation marks that you can use for strings and defining a string. But if you don't want to use like double quotation marks, you want to use single quotation marks, it's valid. Just make sure that you stay very consistent to whatever you decide on. It's just good form. Okay, so let's just type in this, hello Python, and we're just going to save this file, which hopefully should just update that other one. Open back up this terminal, and we're going to call hello.python. I just hit the arrow key just to go back to the previous entries. So you can see here, and we can just run this again. As you can see, it prints out the number 2, hello Python, and then hello Python. So yeah, this is a very, very basic introduction to the coding language. See, I'm not having any extra software, not anything crazy. We can just kind of go here and just edit this continuously with just any text editor, and you're already writing your first kind of basic amounts of code, right? Now you don't have to do this. There are easier ways to write code. This is just showing you that this is possible. You can write code pretty much anywhere using any kind of text editor. I could use like, as long as I can save the file as a .py file, I can use any text editor I want to. I could use WordPad, I could use Notepad, I could use any kind of text editor. And later, in other videos, we're going to use something called an IDE. It just makes the entire process of writing programs in Python a lot easier. So, yeah, this is just a very brief and basic introduction to Python.